after like a 2.5-week hiatus. Cameron went to like Guatemala. I went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, not for as long as Cameron was in Guatemala, but still he went to Guatemala, which we're going to ask him about in just a quick moment. But I do the ESPN da-na-na, because here on the Fly Guys podcast, we're here to give you a show talking about the Flyers. Making a deal with the newly minted rivals of the Flyers, the Anaheim not-so-mighty Ducks. Because of one of the players they have there, some guy that just didn't want to be a Flyer, so he wasn't going to be a Flyer. Cameron Klein, I only have one thing to say to you before I ask about your vacation and everything. Trevor Zegras is a Philadelphia Flyer.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, we got him out of there. Dude, I will say, I don't want to toot my own horn, even though I do. But your boy called this back in like February or whatever it was, where I was just like, hey, Danny Briere mentioned a couple things, okay? He mentioned a young kid. He mentioned centers, and he mentioned short-term contracts. Tell me that's not Trevor Zegras. 1 year left, 24 years old, center, hell of upside, right? We'll get into how our opinions of the trade and everything like that in a little bit. But yeah, it's an exciting day, right? Whether you like the news or you don't, but it's an exciting day.
Danny Briere keeping the tradition alive of June 23rd being a day of trades in Philadelphia Flyers history. June 23rd, 2001. The Flyers, it didn't change the course of their franchise history, says Jason McNeil, but they did acquire Yuri Depita from the Florida Panthers on June 23rd, 2001. On June 23rd, 2002, not a blockbuster, but the Flyers exchange, draft picks with Columbus. Okay. In 2007, the Flyers traded on June 23rd with the Washington Capitals. They did a pick swap that allowed them to pick Kevin Marshall. And so we all remember Kevin Marshall, of course. How could we forget? And then June 23rd, 2011, one of the biggest trades in team history. I still don't know why they did it, but they did it. Mike Richards and Jeff Carter.
Yeah.
Out you go. Jeff Carter, I totally understood. Mike Richards, well, he just partied a little bit too much. But who they got back, Wayne Simmons and Braden Shen and Jake Voracek, just unbelievable. And then 1 year later, they go ahead and they acquire Luke Shen, and James Van Riemsdyk, heading to the Toronto Maple Leafs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So the point is that they've made so many trades. They had not made a trade on June 23rd since 2018. But Danny Briere is like, okay, we're making some moves, and we're going to keep it in the line of tradition holding of the Philadelphia Flyers. Because if there's one thing that all Flyers fans love, it's tradition. Let's start with the basics here. Let's start with what the trade actually is. The Flyers acquire Trevor Zegras. I almost said Yuri Depita. They acquire Trevor Zegras for the following. A 2025 second-round pick, reportedly the 45th pick in the draft.
Yes.
A fourth-round pick in 2026, and they're also sending Ryan Palin. The minute I saw the details of the deal, Cameron, I thought to myself, bargain dollar right there. That was flea market sales. That was Howie taking a fourth-rounder and giving it to the Dolphins for Jay Ajayi. That, to me, was such a nice buying kind of low for what could be a very high return on investment right there. And I know that Zegras, he has not repeated the production of his first 2 years. He's had the injury bug, much like another close friend of his that is now also on the Flyers in Jamie Drysdale. But that is why a player of his caliber was available, because of those things. And when you're a rebuilding organization, these are the swings you have to take to get to the other side of where you want to be.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. Also, fun fact, that second-round pick that the Flyers gave up was a part of the Ivan Provorov trade. So, thank you for that. Again, Ivan.
Thanks, Proby.
Thank you for your hard work. A lot of thoughts. Everything that you just said, because you're right? There's a lot of talk about Trevor Zegras. About his production has dropped down the last 2 seasons. Injury prone, which that one worries me a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much to it, right? So I wanted to pull this up because I remember reading an article back, I believe in March it was. And I pulled it up, found it. For those that are looking for it, it's called Analyzing Why Ducks Forward Trevor Zegras' Star Has Dimmed. It's by Adam Vingan on Sportsnet, right? And he mentions pretty much about how, despite his point production lowering over the last 2 seasons, Trevor Zegras, in terms of his intangibles and his analytics, haven't really changed much, right? And, for example, he points out that, here it is, want to say it was his slot passes per game. Right. Over the past 2 seasons, his slot passes per game, 1.54, are actually higher than they were during his 60-point seasons of 1.52. Now, you're kind of nitpicking a little bit with stats, right? But I wanted to bring up Greg Cronin, the previous head coach of the Anaheim Ducks before he was let go to make room for Joel Quenneville just a few weeks ago. Greg Cronin, when he came in, he wanted to, and he said this himself, he wanted to just add some defensive game to Trevor Zegras. He wanted to make him more of a defensive player, not just the offensive stud that he already was, right? And he started to see that reflected. So looking at, in this article, it has a nice little fun little graphic, gotta love a graphic, of stats from 2021 to 2023, 23 to 25. Scoring chances, 21 to 23, 8.86, or 1.86. 23 to 25, 1.74. Not much of a difference, right? A little bit of a dip, but not majorly. Offensive generating plays, 7.84 in 21-23 to 7.58, 23-25. Not much of a major dip. A little bit of a dip, don't get me wrong, but not major. Offensive zone carry-ins, 4.59, went down to 3.69. A noticeable dip there.
Yep.
Open ice dekes, 2.41, went down to 1.95. Noticeable dip. But then offensive zone possession, 42 seconds, went down to 38 seconds. A little bit of a dip, but not major. Now, to me, the two major dips were the offensive zone carry-ins and the open ice dekes.
Yep.
That, to me, when you start to think about Greg Cronin saying, hey, I wanted to be a little bit more defensive, not as offensive-minded, and I look at that, and then I look at, again, the offensive zone carry-ins, the open ice dekes. That, to me, reads a kid who's being smarter with the puck. He's not as selfish. He's going to pass it a little bit more, try to move it around a little bit more. He's not going to try to hold on to it and make a play, get stripped, and have it be taken away from him. He's willing to give it up. He's willing to create a play for somebody else, right? Couple that with just his basic stats, right? You just head over to Hockey Reference, look at his basic stats. The 2 seasons from 21 to 23, he had 61 points in 75 games, 65 points in 81 games. We've all seen him, right? It's how he got the cover of the NHL game.
Yep.
Yada, 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 whatever. Kid looked absolutely like a stud. In those 2 seasons, he was a minus 21 and a minus 24, right? Not great. Once again, speaking to how he was just not a great defensively sounded player, Greg Cronin wanted to change that. Bring him in 23-24, Greg Cronin's first season as the Anaheim Ducks head coach. Shortened season for Trevor Zegras. Had a couple surgeries. I believe that was the meniscus one, or it might have been the broken ankle. I can't remember. But I know he had a lower body injury starting off in November, and then something else happened in January early that year. And I can't remember, again, if it was the meniscus or the ankle. I want to say it's the meniscus because he only played 31 games that season.
December 12th, 2024, he successfully underwent a surgery for a torn meniscus in his right knee.
Okay. So 23-24, that must have been the ankle. So he had 15 points in 31 games played. So a noticeable dip in point production, right?
Yep.
And again, it's only 31 games, but he went from minus 24 in 81 games to a minus 1. A noticeable uptick in the plus minus. And again, it's a flawed stat. I know, but it doesn't mean nothing.
The caveat, obviously, with all of this, we should say we stipulate knowing the Ducks sucked in this time period. We understand that.
Yeah, big time. Yeah. I mean, again, it's how they got Trevor Zegras and McIntosh and, a lot of whatever.
Yeah.
Bring us into this most recent season. Still a little bit injury prone. He, again, had that meniscus surgery in December, but still came back. He had 57 games played. He had 32 points, a little bit more of a bounce back. Minus 8 on the plus minus. So a very significant uptick in the plus minus. And the other thing, too, I noticed is in the 2 seasons that he crushed it with the 60-point seasons, 50 penalty minutes in 21-22 and 88 penalty minutes in 22-23. And then in 23-24, he had 30 penalty minutes in 31 games. This past season, 21 penalty minutes, or 23 penalty minutes in 57 games. This, to me, seems to be a more disciplined player, a more defensively sounded player. And then you look at his shot percentage, right? Those two 60-point seasons, 12.7, 12.5% shot percentage. Pretty accurate, pretty solid.
Yep.
23-24, 8.2, noticeable dip. But then again, this past season, 12.2. Just as accurate as he was in the 60-point seasons. But this time, instead of shooting the puck 181 or 184 times, he shot it 98 times. He's not just winging it at the net anymore. He's more selective with his shots. He's taking the smarter shots. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to put him on the net a lot more than he has been, right? My point being is that a lot of people are noticing and pointing out the fact that his offensive production has dipped down, and it has. But that's because, to me, in my opinion, he's focused on other parts of his game.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Cronin himself said during this article in March when it came out, so a couple months ago, that of all the players in the team, the ones who improved the most, but it's not being shown by their point production, is Trevor Zegras. He's like he's looked the best out of all of them in terms of improving himself. So my point being, I'm not really worried about the offensive production dipping down. To me, I'm thinking we're getting a Trevor Zegras who is a more all-around better hockey player. He was in a situation with the Anaheim Ducks where they sucked. They had a log jam at center, so they put him at wing, which is not a position that he was naturally good at, right? Not that he naturally played, I should say. Yet he stuck it out. He played where they wanted him to play. He played disciplined. He's a coachable player because he changed his ways, right, in order to fit Greg Cronin's scheme.
Yep.
You're getting that kid, and you're now putting him with the Philadelphia Flyers, where he can now, in my opinion, be in a role where he's allowed to be more of the offensive player he was 2 years ago. Now, the big worry for me is still the injuries. That is, to me, a legitimate worry because, as the age-old saying goes, the best ability you can have is availability. And if you're not available, what are you worth to me?
Mm-hmm.
But all that being said, if he isn't injured, if he plays majority of the season, you're getting a guy who has grown into a better all-around hockey player who still, despite not focusing on it, still maintains the skill that he has. You see that in the shot percentage. You see that in the offensive chances that he can create. You see that in the puck possession that he has in the offensive zone. And you got that for Ryan Poehling, who, don't get me wrong, I think he's 26, I believe, right? He's a young guy himself.
Yeah, Ryan Poehling.
But he's, at this point, the Flyers viewed him, and a lot of people viewed him as a fourth-line center who his biggest upside was that he's fast. Well, so is Trevor Zegras, right? Trevor Zegras is extremely fast. It's probably one of his best-known attributes, other than his puck handling. A second-round pick this year in a weak draft, and a fourth-round pick next year when you still have a first, a second, and a third.
A lot of picks.
So, yeah, in my opinion, this is a great trade. And if it doesn't pan out, it was only a one-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
You still got room to play with. You still have plenty of draft picks going into next season. It wasn't a big loss with a major amount of upside. So, in my opinion, I'm very happy with the trade. Very happy.
The Flyers, another thing to remember, the Flyers have their own 6th overall pick. They have they have
read it out, brother. Read it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have their 6th overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
They have Colorado's first pick in this year's draft. They have the number 131 overall pick from Edmonton.
I mean, if you're going to go that far, win the effing cup, dude. If you're going to go that far and you're going to make it a 31 or a 32, make it a 32.
Make it a 32, yeah. Trust me.
Stu. Come on, Stu.
What do you want me to say? What could I say? We could get into that near the end of the show. They have a second-round pick. They have their own second-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
They just traded one of their second-round picks, obviously, to Anaheim. They have a second-round pick acquired from Anaheim in the 2024 trade for Cutter Gauthier. They have a 2025 second-round pick acquired from Calgary in exchange for Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. They have their own third-round pick. They have their own. They have 2 fifth-round picks and a 6th-round pick. They have 10 picks in this year's draft. They have 10. They have 10. They have, between the next 3 seasons, they have 23 picks. 23, with 2026 being the lowest amount, where they have 5 picks.
Yep.
But they still have their first and second round picks in each of the next 3 drafts, including 2 once again in 2027. It's a top 10 protected pick from the Toronto Maple Leafs, but are you expecting the Maple Leafs to be a top 10 bad team in 2027? I don't think it'll be bad. I tell you this, though. I don't think they're going to be very good in 2027.
I was about to say, you're starting to see the beginning of a possible blow-up of that roster. Starting with Mitch Marner. I mean, he's gone already.
He's gone. We already know that Marner's not coming back.
Dunzo. Yeah.
So, what they gave up is so acceptable for this risk.
Yeah.
Because it's not a risk. A risk would be if they gave $12 million a year for 8 years to Mitch Marner, right? Like as if he would turn the franchise around just by himself. That's a risk that you don't want to take. That's way too dumb.
Right.
This was such a good flippin' job by Danny Briere. And what he was asked about, what he said, and I texted it too, was hopefully this is just one piece of the puzzle. And you came back, Cameron, and you said, we see, he can't goaltend, obviously. Zegras is not a goaltender.
Still a lot of holes in this roster, man. Still a lot of holes. Yeah.
What this trade did is bring the Flyers no closer to a Stanley Cup final, because at the end of the day, one player cannot make that much of a difference on a team.
Yes.
If that were the case, I would be celebrating Connor McDavid having 2 Stanley Cup trophies right now. Instead, I've been weeping over 2 Edmonton Stanley Cup final losses.
Yeah.
But what this does do is it gives Philadelphia a chance to build on a foundation that they so desperately need. And Cameron, you already kind of put it out there. Trevor Zegras with potentially Matvei Michkov and Travis Konechny out there.
I mean, talk about it's the most annoying line in hockey.
I mean, that's a line. That's a line where you're going to end up to someone on the opposing line is going to take a dumb double minor when they just high stick someone because they're just too frustrated.
Yeah, it's going to piss them off at the very least.
It's going to piss them off. So that is really kind of the big thing out of today is Trevor Zegras. Now, another thing to mention, and is the obvious thing, is where is he going to play and how is he going to fit with Coach Rick Tocchet? How does he fit with this coaching staff? Because I had actually a whole thing planned of what I wanted to talk about today before this whole trade happened. I had it written down. I had notes. I had a previous episode for you guys to all listen back to when you wanted to hear more about it, and that was regarding the coaching staff of Philadelphia. Because when Tocchet got hired, I was like, okay, you know what? We'll see. Maybe it's a good fit for him. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Then the assistant coaches got announced, Cameron.
Yeah. I know what I already knew what episode you were referencing.
Let's just so Dylan Crawford is an assistant coach. All right. Yaroslav Sovjevsky. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I most certainly am. And Jay Varady and Todd Reardon is on the Flyers staff.
There he is.
There he is. And Cameron, you so eloquently referred to Todd Reardon as a PE teacher with multiple DUIs that the school just won't address.
I said that's what his picture looked like. I'll say that. Okay?
It's what he flat out looks like.
Yeah. The photo that the Flyers have of him, it just looks, yeah. He's got the red face. Like the drinking face. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying he does. I'm just goofing.
We're making jokes. Right? Here's the thing about Todd Reardon. Here's what we do now. And this comes from a source from years ago. Todd Reardon was the source tells us, and the only reason we know this source is because we knew this person at one point very closely, and that they worked within the Washington Capitals organization with their minor league affiliate. The source pretty much goes that Todd Reardon was such a toxic personality inside the locker room during that 2018 run, especially for the Washington Capitals, that he and Barry Trotz, I mean, you couldn't have gotten them to sit within 10 feet of one another if they didn't have to.
Yeah.
And so Reardon wanted the job. He wanted Trotz gone. He apparently at one point had flat out asked the old coach of the Hershey Bears, whose name I'm blanking on. He went on to coach the Belleville Senators. Hey, do you want a job in this organization? And by the way, what I'm reporting to everyone right now is so goddamn speculatory that you should almost not even accept it as true. This is simply what I heard from this source. Did I ever question this source on it? Not really. There was no reason for me to question it. There was also no reason for me to think that this was a lie. But point being that Todd Reardon very much wanted the job in Washington. And history shows that he got that job that he wanted in Washington.
Exactly.
And proceeded to take a Stanley Cup winning team, let them get bounced in round 1 against Rod Brindamore's Carolina Hurricanes, and twice. You're right. You are right. Twice. And then from pretty much that point on, the Washington Capitals never recovered. Todd Reardon then went on to be an assistant coach with the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins are not failures because of Todd Reardon, but he certainly did nothing to help turn that ship around in Mike Sullivan's camp. And so now here he is as an assistant in Philadelphia. And if you're not caring that Todd Reardon's the coach or an assistant coach, fine. I totally get it. You don't have to care that he's an assistant coach. What do assistant coaches do anyway? Well, let me ask you something like this. Are you, as you sit here listening, did you care about Rocky Thompson's performance as an assistant coach?
Right.
If you say you didn't, I know you're lying, because everyone in this fan base cared at least a little, just a little bit.
Well, they needed to sit down with him, and they needed to see his PowerPoint presentation, and then they would understand that we're wrong, and that 15% of the power play is actually pretty good. No, dude,
you watch. He's gonna go and like take that New York Islanders like AHL job that he just got. He's gonna turn them into superstars over there. His power play is gonna be running at like 28%, and then he's gonna get a job and be like, just Rocky Thompson is gonna become like the next successful head coach with like the Buffalo Sabres or something like that.
Right. And some other garbage organization.
Philadelphia ran another good one out of town. That's what they do.
Right. Like, it could happen. It definitely could. And the Todd Reirden hire doesn't make me any more optimistic that that's not going to happen. But I will say that I do think Todd Reirden is a better power play coach than Rocky Thompson. Right. And I do think his resume does speak for that. As much as there could be a laundry list of other problems, I will say it's like, okay, at least ideally, this should mean that the power play is going to improve. And now you got Trevor Zegras as well. That should also help with that, hopefully. But yeah, no, dude. I don't know. I don't love it for everything you just mentioned. It's another thing of what we mentioned about Rick Tocchet and how it was like, well, we want to get rid of John Tortorella. We want to move to a new form of more modern hockey. And they went with Rick Tocchet, who was Mike Sullivan's assistant, who was at one point John Tortorella's assistant. And now we got Todd Reirden, who was Mike Sullivan's assistant, who at one point was John. Again, it's part of the coaching tree, whatever. But yeah, the rumors we heard were a lot of arguing, a lot of, like you said, toxicity. I always kind of thought of it in the way of like Mike Ditka and Buddy Ryan, 85 Bears, barely talking to each other kind of thing. That's kind of how it was described.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when you're looking at what happened this most recent season with the blow-ups and the toxicity in the locker room and how the team kind of gave up on the coaching staff, specifically John Tortorella, it doesn't really leave a great taste in my mouth bringing another supposedly toxic person into the locker room.
This is extremely alleged. It's all allegedly.
Still, but it's something. And again, like you said, the following seasons afterward lended more credibility to the sources that we've heard. So yeah. It's a I don't know. I was, as you put it, we were both cautiously optimistic with the Rick Tocchet hire. And now I'm cautiously optimistic of Todd Reirden. I don't like that I'm cautiously optimistic twice.
Oh, I'm cautiously pessimistic about the whole thing. I just don't know if Tocchett's the guy. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I certainly don't think Reirden is going to be a great assistant coach. Listen, maybe Dylan Crawford will be a nice addition as the video guy. You know, he knows Rick. They worked together out in Vancouver, and before that, he was with Chicago.
Yes.
Just one side note: the Flyers website, which it's the Flyers website, they have to spin things. Says here that Reirden most recently served as an assistant coach and associate coach with the Pittsburgh Penguins from 2020 to 2024, where he oversaw the team's defensive group and power play unit. Don't go looking up the numbers on those units, by the way. Yeah. He helped the team to a 161, 104, and 37 record in 302 regular season games. I'm just going to point this out here. 161, 104, and 37. Oh, that's not that bad. We're talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just remember where the Pittsburgh Penguins have been as far as the trajectory goes over the last number of years. It's not pretty by any stretch.
And if you look at the power play numbers average-wise of the Washington Capitals when he took over, they went down as he coached there.
So we're not getting exactly the power play whisperer, in my opinion, on this staff. And
also, the power play thing, especially with the Washington Capitals, there's a certain guy on the Washington Capitals that kind of makes it his business to score on power plays. He kind of made a whole career on it. He kind of does it and has done it more than any other player has done it ever in league history.
Helps to have
that helps.
That helps.
That helps.
Well, what did you say to me? You said Rick's like, well, I got a Russian. I can just go get the guy that worked with the previous great Russian hockey player.
Why not?
At that point, you know what? I agree. Hey, should have called up Bruce Boudreau, see if he wanted to run the Flyers power play. But
Rick Tocchet walked in the room. He was like, he said, who was his favorite player? Get Todd on the phone. Get Todd on the phone. Yeah.
So that's the Flyers coaching situation.
Yeah.
The Flyers player situation looking tiny bit better. They have Trevor Zegras. That's looking good.
Yeah.
And we have a draft to get to in a little bit.
Yeah. They also put a couple of nice contracts we haven't talked. We have talked about them, but we haven't talked about them publicly.
Well, we haven't talked about them on the show.
Yes.
First and foremost, the Flyers giving 2 years of an extension to Tyson Foerster. Was a big fan of that contract.
And it's what 3.5, I think, right? A year?
Something like that. It's around there. I think it has. I think it had a total value of like $4.3 million or something like that. I think it was pretty good.
I'll pull it up.
Oh, I'm sorry, an AAV of 3.75. There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
So then the Flyers locked up another youngish guy on their core. We had long suspected that he probably would get snatched up by the Flyers in a contract because he was mentioned as one of the guys when the Flyers sent out their letter to season ticket holders. Noah Cates getting a 4-year contract extension, who's 26 years old right now. Noah Cates had a part of the season where it was like he was just simply the best player on the ice for the Flyers.
He was.
It wasn't even just from an offensive standpoint. It was from how gritty and tenacious he was on the forecheck that just, will enamor any player to a Philadelphia fans. If you're, especially this one right here, if you're tenacious and really, really good on the forecheck. So he gets 4 years at $4 million. I texted you, Cameron. I said, I like it. I like the deal because this was not 6 years, $8 million. This was not 8 years, $8 million, which they had already done with two other guys in Konechny and Tippett. They straight up just gave the guy exactly what I thought he was worth. 4 years, $4 million.
In 2 years, I mean, even right now, right? But in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, having a third line center at 30 years old, making $4 million a year,
it's not bad.
That's pretty much what I would say a steal by that point, considering the cap's going to be continuing moving up. Yeah, I love it personally. Considering this is not like it wasn't like this was just one season that Noah Cates like all of a sudden like, oh, he looks great on a shitty team. Like, where have you seen that before? He's been consistently getting better throughout his career, throughout the 3 years that he's been with Philadelphia. Last year and going into this year, like this year, he at start wasn't playing. He was a scratch to start the season, and yet hopped in, never looked back. Yeah, I don't see any bad part of this whatsoever, really. And again, worst comes to worst, if you have to move him, it's $4 million a year for a center who can play tough minutes, who can skate well. He can be moved, no problem.
I agree. I don't think that this is a deal that'll come back and haunt the Flyers like other contracts had over the years.
Right. Toronto's going to pay a first for Scott Lawton. You know what I mean? Like worst comes to worst, if this does not work out, it's like you're still, you're going to be fine. He'd be easily moved. I love it. I think it's great.
Yep.
I think it's
great. The Flyers are slowly putting together their core. Their free agency is still going to be out there. The Flyers can plug away with some depth moves. We're not expecting them to make any big time moves. Although, to be fair, I don't think many people were expecting them to trade for Trevor Zegras today, so anything can change.
True.
But I don't think the Flyers can be making any splash moves in free agency.
Right.
What I will say, as I yawn, I promise I'm not bored with this episode. I'm just unbelievably tired. What I will say about this entire Flyers roster reconstruction is that if you look at the roster and you look at the moves that they're making, you should not be thinking to yourself, they're going in the right direction.
Right.
I would caution against that mindset for one reason. There are so many holes on this team. These aren't holes. These are potholes. These are so deep and troublesome and still so much work to be done. They don't have a goalie right now, which is only kind of important if you want to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. As we have seen for the last 2 years, the Flyers should get a goalie like Sergei Bobrovsky. If they could get a guy like that in their organization, can you imagine how good they could be?
It does crack me up that like a lot of people are like that. A lot of Flyers fans are kind of jumping to like, we don't want to we're like stop bringing it. It doesn't matter, right? Because it's like, I understand I understand that the trade at the time that the Flyers made, it wasn't as horrible as it is looking back. In hindsight, it looks way worse than it is. I understand that they traded for a guy like Steve Mason, who was a rookie of the year. He was also a great goaltender. He played well with the Philadelphia Flyers. I get all that. However, Flyers fans, our own, that are saying like, "Oh, just stop bringing it up." No.
He's a Hall of Famer.
He's one of the best goaltenders of this era, who was drafted by a team
that
is notorious for not having goaltenders ever.
You can't. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
It's not nothing. Okay. It's not nothing.
It's like imagine you're the Toronto Maple Leafs and you have this goalie in your system, right? And you're thinking, oh, screw it. Let's go get, let's get rid of this guy for oh my gosh, I don't remember the guy that they traded for, looking back on it. But who does this guy turn out to be that you traded away? This some nobody goalie that you traded away in your system to the lowly Boston Bruins. Oh, does his name happen to be Tuukka Rask? And he's going to haunt you for the next decade plus?
Yeah, dude.
Let me tell you something. That Flyers trade of Sergei Bobrovsky is actually worse than the trade of Tuukka Rask. And I'll tell you exactly why. Tuukka Rask does not have 2 Stanley Cup trophies.
Mm-hmm.
Sergei Bobrovsky does.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to say the Flyers would not have won any cups with Sergei Bobrovsky, fine.
Fair.
I'll accept that argument.
Yeah, me too.
But you know what they would have had in that time? A goalie. So they would have
had a building block. Yes, they would have had a building block.
And if we're going to just assume here that the Florida Panthers, right? Let's just say the Florida Panthers, as long as they have Sergei Bobrovsky, they could always be in contention, right? Because they have a great goalie. So let's just use that same logic with the Flyers. As long as the Flyers would have had Sergei Bobrovsky, they would have been in contention to be something in the Eastern Conference. Well, then let's see, his career started in 2011. It's 2025. That would have given the Flyers 14 years at least of a legitimate crack of having this great goalie in their system where all they have to do is build a defense around them. And don't think they weren't doing that. Did they not try and sign Shea Weber to that big contract way back in the day that the Nashville Predators matched?
Did
they not try? They brought in guys like Mark Streit. They brought in Andy McDonald. They brought in Nicholas Grossman. They brought in guy after guy after guy to try and shore up the defense. And guess what? You know what I never thought in that time period? The defense is really abysmal. Like in the days of Kimmo Timonen and when they still had Braden Coburn and so I didn't think the defense was that bad. You know what was bad? The goaltending for the most part. Yeah. Steve Mason was a good goalie in Philadelphia. I agree. Yeah. Was he better than Bobrovsky? No, he was certainly not.
No, and the other thing too is like people bring up like, well, the Flyers had a goaltender at the time, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's not ignore that the goaltender that was signed, that was the reason why I was like, well, we already have one, so we might as well try to get everything we can out of this amazing prospect as we can right now, was the guy who dodged pucks in Ilya Bryzgalov. Who, let's be honest, like number-wise, was never amazing, even before he signed that contract.
He really wasn't.
He was known for why you have to be mad. Space is humongous big. That's, and I love Briz. I loved him. He was super fun, right? But this is a guy who he himself at one point said after a playoff performance, I couldn't stop a beach ball out there.
He was honest.
That was the guy the Flyers decided we got to keep him. We're gonna sign him long term, and we're gonna trade away Bobrovsky.
His best.
Don't get me wrong. I understand, like you just said, they might not have ever won a cup with Bobrovsky. At this point, the point is moot at this point because it was 15 years ago. All those things are true. However, at the same time, it's not nothing,
and it won't ever be nothing.
Hey, he's got what, 3 Vezinas? He's got at least 2. I know he's got 2. He had one with Columbus and one with Florida. I know he's got 2.
Do I even want to look at what I'm about to look at? It's gonna hurt me.
You said, he's a Hall of Fame goaltender.
2-time Vezina. 2-time Vezina. 2-time Cup winner. Only 2 All-Stars, which is crazy when you think about it. Crazy. Career numbers. .914 save percentage. .258 goals against average.
That was when he spent half his career in Columbus, for Christ's sake. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? Like
Ilya Bryzgalov in 2 years in Philadelphia. .905 save percentage. 2.60 goals against average, which, by the way, in today's NHL is like legendary numbers, apparently.
Hey, the Philadelphia Flyers today, I'd take that. I'd take that today.
Oh, you know what? I'll tell you what, let's take it a step further. Let's just I just want to.
Let's just take it deeper. Let's just take the hole deeper. Let's make it more painful. Yeah,
because here's the thing: I could spend time trying to rationalize in my head why the Flyers are still going to end up okay. And oh shucks, the Carter Hart thing. I mean, who could have predicted that the Carter Hart thing was going to go against them, right? You can't predict that.
Yeah.
There's one way you could have avoided that. Don't trade your superstar Russian rookie goalie. How about that? And by the way, can I just make one mention of something very important? When that 24/7 came out about, with like Ilya Bryzgalov, the solo versus
the road to the Winter Classic. Yeah.
Who played in the Winter Classic, by the way? Was that Ilya? Did Ilya Bryzgalov get the star, or was that Sergei Bobrovsky?
Yeah.
That's a dumb point to make, but it's a point I never forgot.
Like, I don't forget that. That's another one of those games that
we lost the game. Just in case anyone needs to know, we lost the game.
I can still hear Peter Laviolette in that documentary in my head. Danny B, take the shot. Danny B, take the shot. And but I'll say this, man. Danny Briere, he's been trying to save the franchise since 2007, and he's continued that warpath today. With another trade that seemingly on paper looks pretty good. But yeah, dude. The Bob thing when some Flyers fans saying stop bringing it up. No,
I will never, ever stop bringing it up.
This is Philadelphia, and this is like that's the thing. We demand perfection all the time, and if it's not perfect all the time, you're going to hear about it. You're going to hear about it every time, and it's a major fumble in the organization's history. It is what it is.
You know what? They've had the problem is what led to the Flyers being in the moment that they're in right now are fumbles like these. 5-year deal for Andrew McDonald.
Right.
Big time contract and trade for Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yep.
Like, guys, this matters.
I'm scared. I'm a little scared about Owen Tippett.
Owen Tippett?
A little scared. I'm not overly worried, but it's in the back of my mind.
How could it not be? Seriously, how can it not be?
I've been hurt too many times, man. I've been hurt too many times. I've seen this happen too many times. You know what I mean? So it's like that. That's why. That's why.
When you look at what the Flyers became after 2012.
Yeah.
The lockout happens. They're not good. 2014 happens. Oh, almost beat the Rangers. So close.
Okay, I still Chris Kreider burning.
Game 6 in 2014 was the last day the Philadelphia Flyers were an elite organization.
That was a great night.
Because up to that point, they were always in it. They were always in it.
They were.
That was one thing about the Flyers that you could always count on. They were always in it.
That is disgusting to think about. That is disgusting to think about.
They always had a chance.
Because it never felt that good. It has not felt that good since that night. I remember Buffalo Wild Wings in Langhorne. I remember where I was.
Just remember when, what was it? Braden Coburn clears. They're just ending the penalty kill, and it's he just shoots the puck down the ice. Eric Gustafsson comes out of the not that Eric Gustafsson, another Eric Gustafsson.
No, the first one. Yeah,
the good one, as it turned out. Gets the puck, fires past Henrik Lundqvist. It's 3-0, and you just see everyone's excited, and you've got Henrik Lundqvist on the ropes. Since when did the Flyers have Henrik Lundqvist on the ropes? And you're thinking, man, they could go into Game 7. If they could just find a way to win Game 7, maybe. And they never did, and the organization was never the same after that. And trades of Sergei Bobrovsky, and the tragic injury of Vinny Lecavalier, and the bungling of the whole Jaromir Jagr situation after his 1 year in Philadelphia, and Andrew McDonald, Mark Streit, and Shane Gostisbehere's rookie year, and goalie after goalie, Michael Neuwirth, Carter Hart, Anthony Stolarz.
Trading away Shane Gostisbehere for nothing.
Trading away Shane Gostisbehere for literally nothing. You actually you gave up more to get rid of him. And I'm supposed to sit here and tell you, don't think about the Sergei Bobrovsky trade.
Right.
Guys, that's why I get excited with a deal like this, because we're normally the team handing over a relatively good player for Flotsam and Gypsum in return.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also worried about Owen Tippett for what it's worth.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, because again, as you just mentioned, all the other things you just mentioned, all the bad contracts. Again, we've seen it. That's why we've been hurt. We've been burned, right? And we're standing next to the fire. And you have to get near the fire if you want to win. If you want to get the glory, you got to get near the fire. But
we didn't start the fire, but it was always burning since the world's been turning.
Right. and the closer you get, the scar tissue starts to heat up quicker than anything else. That's all. Okay? And that's what's happening right now. But today's a good day. Trevor Zegras is a Philadelphia Flyer. It's something a lot of people have been wanting for a very long time.
Yeah.
And
now
we'll see.
And now they have it. So Cameron, I'm about 40 minutes late, but I wanted to ask you, Guatemala, tell me, how was it?
Well, it was Aruba. It was Aruba. It wasn't Guatemala.
It was Aruba?
Yeah,
I don't know why I kept thinking it was Guatemala the whole time.
I don't know. I thought you were kidding at first when you said that. But it was nice. It was nice. It was very nice.
What's Aruba?
It was a beautiful island. It was a very small island for those that haven't been there. It's very windy also as well because there's nothing really on it. But at the same time, it's very hot. So the wind basically just feels like a nice sea breeze pretty much the entire time you're there, which makes it beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do there. We were there for about, I think, 6 days, I believe.
Okay, nice.
But there's a lot to do there, dude. Very much a lot to do there. A lot of excursions. I mean, dude, swimming in a natural pool right next to the ocean. Very, very cool. Snorkeling in said thing.
I was going to ask you, did you do snorkeling and all that stuff?
Oh, yeah. It was all part of this UTV ride, which pretty much goes around the entire island of Aruba. Very, very cool. They had ironically, one of the things we did was we went to a butterfly farm, which was really cool. And to me, one of the coolest parts, my wife did not find it nearly as cool, was there was in this butterfly sanctuary one of those Amazonian gigantic centipedes.
Oh, that would creep me out just a little bit.
It creeped a lot of people out. And what's funny was people were just kind of there taking photos of it because it was wild. And I was like, that's pretty wild. And then one of the people working there, someone was like, oh, someone said hey, it's a centipede. And one of the people was like, it's a what? And it's one of the centipedes. And they were like, everyone get away from it. That's not supposed to be here. And they immediately, the workers immediately jumped into we got to get rid of this thing mode, right? So then immediately out, the people kind of was just like, oh shit, this is not a good thing. This is kind of creepy. We all kind of thought maybe it was supposed to be there. It wasn't. And some just 16-year-old kid just came over with a dustpan and scissors. Dude, yeah, just emotionless, nothing. Just got a hold of this thing and just walked away like he was just sweeping a daddy long lead out of your dad's garage.
Wow. Okay.
But it was cool. It was very cool. And didn't get sunburnt because I'm a professional. So it was a lot of fun. And then the next weekend I was in actually Scottsdale, Arizona as well, which was a beautiful, great time celebrating one of my best friends, best cousins out there, Mike. Congratulations, brother. Again, thank you again for inviting me. Had a great time.
Yeah.
Dude, the highlight for me for that one was we did a river. It was a river rafting, but it was pretty much like a lazy river, but it was a natural river. And you're pretty much just on this river for about 4 hours in Arizona, looking at beautiful canyons, wild horses just walking around. It was beautiful. It was kind of like you're just moseying through a Clint Eastwood movie on.
Oh, it's so nice.
But yeah, it was so overall. I had a great time traveling, but at the same time, dude, I'm exhausted, and I'm just happy to not be traveling anymore. I'm glad I'm home.
Yeah.
And also, I just realized while I was out there, dude, I'm an old man, dude. I'm an old man now. All right, going out at 11 o'clock. It's so much more difficult than it was before. I can't do it. And the whole time, I remember just thinking to myself, I'm just I was like, miss my dog. Wonder how he's doing. That kind of thing. So
you've reached being an old man when you think, man, I just want my bed.
When you miss your responsibilities, you know what I mean? That's when you know. But no, it's been a great time. It's been a great time. But I will ask, for those that don't know, with you, I mean, Football Hall of Fame.
I know.
Been around. Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was everything that I hoped it would be. It was
the Hall of Fame, not Ohio, by the way, for everyone's wondering. Not Ohio.
If you go to Canton, do not expect Lumiere to be greeting you as you enter your hotel. Let me just put it to you that way.
Yeah.
The Hall of Fame.
You understand alcoholism. You'll understand alcoholism if you go to Ohio. It makes sense.
In any part of Ohio, I guess, for that matter. Yeah, it doesn't have to just be. Yeah, the people of Ohio or something else. But the Hall of Fame was really nice.
Yeah.
Seeing all the history and all that stuff, and taking the time to read as much history as I wanted to. There were a lot of things that I really did not know that were really cool to learn because, I pride myself on being kind of like a student of like the history of football, and it was really cool actually to learn a lot more than I had ever realized. Because the one part of football that I've actually never been as good at with is what came before the NFL,
As
and
most people aren't.
yeah,
And
like the initial like teams and all that stuff. And I think that what was really cool just to learn about the original ambassadors of the game, Red Grange and Jim Thorpe. I know who those people are, obviously, but I guess I had underestimated their value to the growth of the game of football just because of what football was at that point in time, where it was definitely not on the same level as baseball. It was certainly not as fast or as exciting as what the game is today. But here was my favorite part. When it came to specifically to showing off the kind of knowledge that I have, we were going through like walking through like they have like it's all separated by decades. You have the 1920s you can read about, then the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, or you can read by eras like different. You can read about the Paul Tagliabue commissioner era, or the Pete Rozelle era, or you can go to the Roger Goodell era if you for some reason don't know enough about the game happening today.
Right.
But at one point, we're standing in the 40s section, and I'm thinking, I was like, hey, this is like where the Eagles kind of became like the gold standard of football for a little bit. They won the championships in 48 and 49. And I said, I was like, the crazy, and I turned to my one friend and I said, the crazy thing about football is that it really was not until 1958, the NFL championship between the New York Football Giants and the Baltimore Colts, led by Johnny Unitas, and that's considered to be the greatest game ever. That's the game that, people refer to as the game that put football on the map. It made it must-see TV.
Yeah.
Walk a few feet over. There it is.
It's playing on a loop. It's constantly playing on a loop.
And Drew, my friend Drew says to me, goes, "You can work here." Right. And I was just like, I shouldn't I? I really, really should.
I said the same thing off. Like we were saying the same thing off air, where I was like, it's a shame that it's in Ohio.
It's a 6-hour drive, I guess, something like that.
Yeah.
Stinks that it's in Ohio. It should be in a better area, not Canton. But
it's the birthplace of football.
But that is the birthplace of football.
Yeah.
So yes, we let them have it. I do think that there is so much value in going to museums and to sports Hall of Fames, and whether that would be visiting the Basketball Hall of Fame, whether you're going to Cooperstown, New York, to visit the Baseball Hall of Fame, or you go make a trip to Toronto to visit the Hockey Hall of Fame. Or it doesn't have to be a team sport. Maybe you want to go see the history of the Kentucky Derby or the Preakness Stakes or the Belmont Stakes or all that stuff. I know my horse racing. That's damn right. I know the 3 big races.
I didn't know any of those. I will say this, though, like for also non-sports museums as well. You and I mentioned, again, like possibly going in the future at some point to the Football Hall of Fame again for inauguration, whatever. If you do, right? If you end up going again, with or without me, whatever. Try to make it a joint trip. Cleveland is not far from Canton.
About 50 minutes away or something like that, right?
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
Cannot recommend it enough.
If I had more time in Ohio, I would have made that a trip. I definitely would have made that a thing.
Because honestly, if you're going to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you're going to have to dedicate about 4 to 6 hours. Because there are, I think, about 5 or 6 different levels to it.
That's so nice.
It's amazing. It's very, very, very cool. So yeah, shout out to Ohio. They do have good museums. Got to give them that. But to your point with the Football Hall of Fame, it does a great job of having so much information about all these different individual people because of how long the league has been around. It gives everybody their equal due for the most part, but it doesn't overwhelm you at the same time.
No.
Every room you walk into, it's not a chore. As some museums can be, it's not a chore to try to read all the plaques, try to get all the information. You're just they pace it well. It's a great job. They nail it. If you are a sports person, if you're a football person, you have to go. I agree.
Could not agree more, Cameron. I think that's so well put. It's not a chore. It really is a joy and a pleasure to walk through.
I could go back tomorrow and spend another 8 hours there easily.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I was really happy with the time that I did put in there. We got in there at 9 and we left at 2:30, and I felt I had put in a lot of good time.
Beautiful.
That's about 5.5 hours I put in at that stadium.
Beautiful.
Or that venue. Saw the Hall of Fame stadium, had some good lunch, and then went back to the hotel. Listen to me, everyone, very carefully. You choose any hotel you want in Canton, Ohio. You are not to choose the Quality Inn Hall of Fame. Just don't do it.
Unless you like
want-
soggy carpets, dude.
If you like soaked floors and wet towels left in your room when you check in, if you're into that, by all means, have a way. Assuming you don't like that, though, there was a beautiful Hyatt hotel right down the road that looked a lot nicer, and I think it even had a restaurant in there. So go check out that one. For the Fly Guys podcast, his name is Cameron Klein. My name is Justin Goodhart. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Fly Guys Podcast, on Twitter at Fly Guys Podcast. Be happy, be healthy, and as always, let's go Flyers.